"You don't belong in 2B. This ticket must be fake." That's the first thing flight attendant Rachel Lynn said to Noah Bennett. No greeting, no check. Just an assumption, thrown like a dagger in front of a dozen first-class passengers already sipping champagne at 8:20 in the morning. Noah didn't flinch. He just looked at her, calm as stone, then quietly handed his phone to the woman standing behind him. She nodded once, stepped to the side, and began typing. 6 minutes later, $1.9 billion in airline funding froze across 4 continents, and 82 flights, including the one they were about to take, wouldn't leave the ground. Tell us where you're watching from, and if you've ever been told you didn't belong somewhere, stick around. Because this story, it doesn't end with an apology, it ends with accountability. It was supposed to be a simple Monday morning. Flight 224 from Dallas to Seattle. Boarding was behind schedule. The cabin was buzzing. Everyone looked exhausted. Everyone. Except the man in the hoodie. Noah Bennett, 45 years old, quietly stepped into the first-class cabin, holding a sleek black duffel in one hand and a folded boarding pass in the other. He wore a charcoal gray hoodie, tailored black jeans, and polished leather sneakers. Clean. Simple. Unmistakably intentional, but not apparently first class enough. Rachel blocked his path. "I need to see your boarding pass, sir," she said, with a tone that sounded more like suspicion than procedure. Noah unfolded it. "Seat 2B, priority 1. She scanned it for less than 2 seconds before snapping, "That's not possible. You're not on the manifest." He tilted his head slightly. "Check again." Rachel didn't move. "We've had fraud alerts all morning. Our system is flagging unusual bookings." From the front row, a white man in a blue pinstripe suit, Ethan Ward, lowered his newspaper just enough to chime in. He probably stole the ticket, or bought it off someone. A few passengers chuckled softly. A few others looked down, uncomfortable. Noah's jaw didn't move. Behind him, his executive assistant Ava West had already started a private screen recording on his phone, time-stamped and encrypted. Rachel folded her arms. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside while we verify. I've given you the boarding pass. You skipped ID verification. That's on you," Noah said, his voice steady, almost too calm. "I'm not moving." "Then I'll have to call security," she replied, loud enough for the front 2 rows to hear. Row 3, aisle seat, Erica Fields, a freelance journalist, tapped her phone camera and whispered, "Rolling." Ethan scoffed again. "I've flown Sky Horizon for years. I know the kind of people who sit here." Noah turned slowly toward him. "What kind is that?" Ethan shrugged. "Let's just say they don't usually wear hoodies and sneakers." Silence. Thick. Uncomfortable. Ava leaned in, whispering to Noah, "Do you want to authorize Skylock?" He nodded once. "Begin protocol." Rachel turned. "I don't care who you are. You can't just stand there refusing instructions." Ava tapped the screen. "Skylock protocol. Flight ethics. Trigger. Activated. Status. Immediate review. Initiated impact. 1.9B. Funding freeze pending compliance audit affected. Sky Horizon plus 4 partner carriers. Flights impacted. 82 FAA plus bank alerts. Deployed." Rachel's tablet beeped, but she ignored it. "You really think dressing like that gives you the right to sit here?" she said. Noah took one slow step forward. "No, but your reaction just proved you think I don't." At that moment, Daniel Hayes, an elderly gentleman in seat 1D, stood up. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "this man hasn't done anything wrong. You've looked at his clothes, not his credentials. That's not airline policy. That's personal bias." Rachel's mouth opened, but no words came. Ava tilted her phone forward, showing her a flashing red warning. "Finance. Systems frozen. Manifest under audit. Ethics protocol." Initiated, Noah didn't raise his voice. "I'm not here to argue," he said. "I'm here to document." Rachel looked around nervously. This is ridiculous. I'm just following procedure. Daniel Hayes shook his head. No, you're following a stereotype. From across the aisle, Ethan muttered under his breath. Can't wait until they drag him off. Maybe he'll finally take the hoodie off and act like a professional. Noah turned his eyes slowly toward him. Don't worry, I'll be leaving. Just not the way you think. Rachel called toward the galley. We need backup. Passenger refusing to comply. Another crew member rushed forward, but paused when Ava showed him a secondary ID. Stratosphere Holdings, Principal Officer, Noah Bennett Authorized Signatory, Airline Ethics and Compliance Systems Clearance. Level 1. His face dropped. Rachel looked from the badge to Noah, then to Ava's screen, then to the passengers staring wide-eyed. You've made a mistake, Noah said calmly. But how you handle the next 6 minutes will define your entire career. By now, half the cabin had gone silent. Phones were recording. Faces had turned. The weight of unspoken history filled the air. Because it wasn't the first time someone like him had been told they didn't belong, but it would be the last time that someone like her said it without consequence. The click of the overhead speaker broke the silence. This is your captain speaking. We're still finalizing our first-class manifest and expect boarding to resume shortly. We appreciate your patience. The voice was calm. Too calm. Like someone reading a script without realizing a storm was already brewing in row 2. Rachel Lynn didn't flinch. She had the headset in her hand now, hovering just over the call button. The word security was one touch away. Her lips were tight, her shoulders were squared, and her eyes? Still locked on Noah Bennett like he was a threat. Not a man who paid for a seat. Not a man with verified clearance. Not a man with power. Just a man in a hoodie she didn't like. You're still not listed, she said through clenched teeth. And I don't care what ID you're showing. Anyone can fake a badge these days. From the aisle, Ethan Ward leaned back with a smirk. Looks like someone's trying to play dress-up and got caught. A few people chuckled nervously. Erica Fields, the freelance journalist in row 3, didn't. Her camera was still recording, low and steady, pointed just off angle, capturing everything, especially the look on Noah's face. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. He just tilted his head to Ava. Update. Ava, already locked into the system through a secure VPN on her phone, didn't look up. Her voice was crisp and surgical. Skylock protocol triggered. 4 partner airlines now flagged. Compliance alerts pushed to FAA. Ethics review pending. Rachel's eyes flicked toward her tablet, which had started to buzz, then froze. The manifest screen glitched once, then flashed red. Warning. Manifest under audit. Funds flagged. Confirm ID before escalation. What is this? She said, stabbing at the screen. What did you do? Ava didn't answer. Noah did. You decided I didn't belong because of my hoodie, but the real problem is this. Your system lets you decide that in the first place. Rachel scoffed, trying to laugh it off. You're making this bigger than it is. Noah stepped slightly closer. Not threatening, just grounded, anchored. You don't know it yet, he said quietly. But that call you're about to make, the one to security, will be the worst decision of your career. Daniel Hayes, the elderly man in seat 1D, stood again. Miss Lind, he said in a steady voice, I strongly suggest you stop and verify his identity before escalating this further. Ethan scoffed loudly. You're taking his side? Daniel looked over his shoulder. I'm taking the side of whoever's calm, collected, and not screaming at someone who's shown a valid pass. Rachel finally pressed the headset button. This is Flight Attendant Lind requesting personnel support. I have a disruptive passenger refusing to comply, possible ID fraud, requesting immediate removal from first class. Noah sighed. The entire cabin heard it. Then, calmly, he turned to Ava and said, Mark that. Security escalation, 8:31 a.m. Ava tapped the phone. Logged. Behind them, one of the junior flight attendants, a young man named Jason, looked between Rachel and Noah with growing discomfort. His hands fidgeted at his sides. His eyes flicked toward the tablet, now stuck on a frozen screen that read, "Ethics Review in Progress. Hold action," Jason whispered. Rachel, maybe we should double-check this." Rachel ignored him. Ava spoke again, louder this time. "For legal clarity, this passenger has not raised his voice, made threats, or violated any safety policy. However, he has now been labeled disruptive based on appearance and assumption." Erica, still filming, added, "Also, his name's on the boarding pass, and the only person escalating here is you." Rachel turned sharply. "Are you recording me?" "Sure am," Erica replied. "I have the right to document racial profiling. And this? It's not even subtle." Ethan groaned. "Now everyone's filming. What a joke." Noah looked at him again, slow and deliberate. "Your jacket cost 5 times more than my flight," he said. "But you'll be the one escorted out of first." Rachel's headset buzzed again. A clipped voice came through. "Lind, stand down. Passenger ID flagged for executive override. Do not escalate." Rachel blinked. "What? That doesn't—" Jason held up the printed manifest, his hand shaking slightly. "Rachel," he said, voice cracking. "The new printout came in. It lists him." She snatched it from him. And there it was. Seat 2B, Noah Bennett, Priority 1, verified. But instead of apologizing, she doubled down. "This doesn't mean anything. He probably hacked the system." Noah let out a single, bitter laugh. Not loud. Just enough. "You think I hacked into your airline's back end to plant my name in your seat roster?" "It's possible," she said. Ava turned to Erica. "Can we make sure that's on video?" Erica replied, "It's all on video." Ethan stood halfway. "All right, this is ridiculous. Let's just move him and deal with this after takeoff." Daniel blocked his path. "No one's moving anyone. Not until this is resolved properly." Rachel's hands were trembling now. "You can't all seriously believe this guy owns anything." Noah stepped forward, pulled a secondary ID from his wallet, and laid it across the galley counter. It wasn't just an ID. It was a federal clearance card, issued to principal stakeholders in regulated financial infrastructures. Under his name read, "Noah Bennett, Chairman, Stratosphere Holdings Authorized Controller, Aviation Ethics Compliance." Rachel staggered back half a step. Jason's voice dropped into a whisper. "Oh my God," Ava added. "You didn't just insult a passenger. You profiled a regulator." Rachel's headset buzzed again. "Lind," the voice said, colder now. "Your actions have triggered a financial ethics alert. Your access will be revoked upon landing." Ethan muttered, "This is insane. No one tells us these things." Noah looked at him. "They didn't have to, because people like you never expected the man in the hoodie to be the one who wrote the funding terms." Jason stepped to Rachel's side, visibly sweating now. "What do we do?" Ava answered for them. "You wait, and you learn. Because in about 4 minutes, the compliance office, 3 banks, and the FAA will be in this airline's back pocket." Rachel said nothing. Noah finally sat in 2B, and for the first time, everyone realized he'd been right where he belonged the whole time. Noah Bennett didn't move for a full 30 seconds after he sat down in seat 2B. He didn't look at Rachel. He didn't look at Ethan. He didn't even look at the manifest printout that now had his name printed in bold black ink. Instead, he let the silence do what words couldn't. It filled the cabin with something heavier than shame, something thicker than tension. It filled the space with memory. Because this wasn't the first time Noah had been told he didn't belong in a seat he had already paid for. It was May 12th, 2010. Noah had just turned 30, and he was flying out of San Francisco International Airport for a startup tech pitch in Austin. His company back then? A niche analytics firm called Core Quant. Small, bootstrapped, hungry. He wore what he always wore, gray hoodie, jeans, and the same clean sneakers he'd kept spotless since college. Because in tech, that's what you wore when you were building something. That's what you wore when you weren't pretending to be powerful. You were just trying to get there. But that day, when he walked up to the first-class gate with his digital pass in hand, the gate agent didn't even scan it. She glanced at him, gave him a tired once-over and said, "Sir, the economy gate is down that way. This line's for priority boarding." No smile, no curiosity, just that look, that you don't belong here look. Noah remembered standing there, blinking once. "I'm in Group 1, he said politely. She still didn't take the scanner off its cradle. "Group 1 for economy?" "No, Group 1, first class." Now she sighed and finally picked up the scanner. Beep. Her eyes flicked to the screen, then up to him again. "Oh." No apology, no correction, just an "oh." She handed him the boarding pass back like she was giving him something he didn't earn. That flight was quiet and long. Noah remembered sitting in 3A, trying to focus on his pitch slides. But all he could hear in his head was that voice. "This line's for priority boarding." And that glance, the moment she decided what he wasn't. Back in the present, Noah blinked once and came back to the sound of Ava whispering, "Seattle operations just pinged. Compliance review officially initiated. You want to say anything?" He shook his head gently. Not yet. Erica Fields, still seated in row 3, leaned forward slightly. Camera lowered now, but still on. "Mind if I ask you something?" she said softly. Noah looked over his shoulder. "Sure. That calm you've got, it's not the first time, is it?" He gave a small smile, a tired one. The kind that isn't rehearsed, it's learned. "No, it's not." Rachel Lynde, still standing by the galley, looked like she wanted to shrink into the wall. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. Her headset was now silent. Ethan tried one last jab. "You know, if you dressed like someone who actually worked in finance, maybe this wouldn't have happened." Noah turned fully in his seat, not aggressive, just direct. "Worked in finance?" He gave a dry laugh. "I write the conditions for the funding your airline depends on." I mean, Noah cut in. "When your company wanted a $310 million restructuring deal 3 months ago, the final terms didn't come from their legal team. They came from mine." That silenced Ethan fast. Daniel Hayes leaned toward Noah slightly. "You always this quiet when things go sideways?" Noah shrugged. "I learned a long time ago that people are loudest when they think they've already won. Let them speak. Let them reveal who they are. Then decide if they're worth correcting." Ava glanced at her phone again. 4 airlines now officially flagged under flight ethics trigger. Sky Horizon's parent fund just went into caution status. Rachel finally spoke. Her voice cracked at first. "You could have said something." Noah looked at her. "I did." She swallowed. "I mean, up front, before all this." "Why?" he asked. "Would you have listened?" Rachel didn't answer, because they both knew the truth. She didn't ignore him because she didn't know who he was. She ignored him because she thought she did. Noah remembered another time. It was Singapore 2 years ago. He just delivered a keynote at a fintech summit, 10,000 people in the audience, his face on the cover of the conference magazine. Still wearing the same hoodie from the stage, he entered the VIP lounge with a valid pass. The attendant took one look at him and said, "Sir, this lounge is reserved for keynote speakers and senior executives." He held up the pass. "I'm both." She didn't scan it, didn't even touch it. She smiled politely, but her tone didn't match the smile. "Maybe try the business lounge across the concourse." He didn't argue. He just walked out, sat on a bench, and opened his laptop. That was the night he began drafting the outline for Flight Ethics Trigger. Rachel finally stepped forward. "I didn't mean to profile you." "But you did," Noah said. She lowered her voice. "It's how we were trained. Not officially, but, you know. Look for out-of-place details. Watch for anything that doesn't fit." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "And hoodie equals red flag?" Rachel looked away. Ava asked, "So how many people have been flagged the same way?" Jason, the junior crew member, spoke quietly. "We don't keep track. We just..." Talk after the flights. Passengers that looked suspicious. People who didn't seem right in premium cabins. And by suspicious, Erica asked, "You mean what? Black? Brown? No tie?" No one answered. Noah stood. Not fast, not showy. Just enough to feel the floor under his feet. "Fear is not protocol," he said. "It's not training. It's not policy. It's a habit you get comfortable calling something else." He turned toward the front of the cabin. But today, that habit ends. The sound of incoming emails dinged on multiple devices across the galley. Ava looked at her screen. FAA has acknowledged receipt. Ethics flags now mandatory in funding reviews. They're requiring airlines to sign the Fairness Accord to requalify for route subsidies. Daniel chuckled, amazed. 6 minutes ago, they thought you were in the wrong seat. Noah gave a small nod. Now they're in the hot seat. For a few seconds, the cabin was so quiet, you could hear the hum of the air vents. Not a cough, not a footstep. Just silence. The kind that sits heavy because everyone in the room knows the truth finally broke through. Rachel Lind, now visibly shaken, still had the headset in her hand, but she didn't press it again. Not after seeing the override ID, not after hearing the voice on the other end tell her to stand down. She didn't move. And that silence? Noah Bennett owned it. Ava's voice broke it first. Calm, but decisive. Flight ethics trigger confirmed escalation. 4 carriers are now frozen. FAA ethics compliance team has acknowledged audit. She didn't need to raise her voice. She just let the words land. Daniel Hayes turned from his seat and looked back at Noah, eyebrows raised. That was fast. Noah nodded. They had it coming. Rachel finally found her voice. This was a misunderstanding, that's all. A glitch in the manifest, an assumption. Noah didn't let her finish. This is not a misunderstanding, he said, standing slowly. His voice carried not just weight, but history. It's a pattern. One you've probably justified a dozen times. But now, you did it in front of the wrong passenger, at the wrong time, with the right documentation behind him. Jason, the junior attendant, shifted uncomfortably by the galley, holding the updated manifest in both hands like a shield. I didn't know any of this, he muttered. Noah didn't look at him. I'm not here for the junior crew, he said. I'm here for the culture that trained you. Rachel tried again. This isn't fair. You escalated this so fast. Ava cut in. No, you escalated. He documented. Erica Fields, still recording, zoomed in slightly as Rachel's expression shifted from defensive to exposed. You see, Ava continued, you told a black man in a hoodie that he didn't belong in first class without verifying his ID while holding a manifest that hadn't refreshed. You skipped every protocol and went straight to accusation. Daniel let out a breath. It's a textbook case. This should be in training manuals. Erica whispered. It will be. Rachel dropped her headset to the counter. This isn't about race, she muttered. It's about following procedure. Noah's voice was like velvet covering steel. Say that louder. I want every person in this cabin to hear it. Say this wasn't about race. Say it while they all watch. Rachel opened her mouth, but no words came out. Noah turned toward the passengers. His posture was firm, measured. Let me be clear, he said. This airline didn't fail today because of one glitch. It failed because of what it empowered. A culture that decides worth by appearance, that punishes dignity when it doesn't come wrapped in a pressed suit. He held up his original boarding pass and laid it on the galley cart beside Rachel's silent headset. Seat 2B, paid in full. Platinum status, priority 1. He turned slightly, voice steady. She looked at me, saw a hoodie, and decided the data was wrong. Jason murmured to himself, that's how we're told to spot red flags. Noah heard it, loud and clear. He pivoted, eyes on the young man. Say that again? Jason hesitated. Rachel shot him a look. Jason, don't. But it was too late. Jason took a breath. Off the record, When we're new, we get these unofficial tips. Red hoodie, no blazer, backpack. You're told to double-check everything. They call it soft protocol, not in the handbook, but it's there. Noah nodded slowly, like something he already knew just got confirmed. Erica lifted her camera slightly. That's gonna go viral. Rachel's jaw clenched. We don't discriminate. We just notice patterns. Daniel chuckled without humor. That's not observation, that's bias. Ava's phone pinged again. She glanced down. Sir, just received update. Treasury Committee is pulling ethics records for the last 12 months from Sky Horizon's internal audits. 4 banks have requested immediate compliance statements. This is officially going federal. Rachel visibly paled. Ethan Ward let out a low, almost nervous laugh. So what, you're taking down the whole airline? Noah turned his eyes on him. No, I'm holding it accountable. Rachel whispered. You're destroying my career. Noah looked at her and said calmly, No, Rachel. You did that. I'm just the one who showed you the mirror. Flashback. He remembered sitting outside that lounge in Singapore. Not the flight, not the pitch afterward, but that moment. Him on a metal bench, holding a cup of tea in one hand and his rejected lounge pass in the other. The security guard never apologized. The receptionist smiled the whole time, and nobody said a word when he stood and walked away. That moment didn't make him angry. It made him strategic. That was the night he drafted the first outline of what would become Stratosphere Holdings' Flight Ethics Division. Back in the cabin, Daniel said softly, You built a system to respond to things like this, didn't you? Noah gave a small nod. I built a system so no one else would have to absorb it in silence. Ava stepped forward. You're not just seeing consequences today. You're seeing infrastructure, oversight, memory. Erica whispered. This story writes itself. Rachel finally spoke again. Her voice was lower now. I was trained to spot inconsistencies. That's all. You looked different. That's not on me. Noah tilted his head. Then who's it on? Rachel stared at the floor. Noah continued, more quietly now. The truth is, you didn't see a customer. You saw a contradiction. A black man, in casual clothes, taking up space in a cabin built for your assumptions. He stepped back. But what you didn't see, what you couldn't imagine, was that I don't fit your profile because I don't need to. Jason stepped forward. He looked at Noah. I didn't say anything because I was scared, he admitted. But I'm sorry. I should have checked the manifest again. I should have spoken up. Noah didn't respond immediately. Then he offered something unexpected. You just did. Ava's phone pinged once more. Sir, all 4 airlines affected have now acknowledged ethics breach. Sky Horizon's funding has been frozen. Treasury confirmed a total of $1.9 billion locked pending protocol review. Erica turned to camera. And that, folks, is how silence turns into systems. Noah sat back down in 2B, not with triumph, not with a smirk, just with the kind of stillness that comes after a storm. He looked around the cabin, saw faces that were no longer skeptical, but reflective. And he said, mostly to himself, but loud enough for everyone to hear, this wasn't a scene. This was a correction. Rachel Lynn's hands trembled as she stepped into the galley. For a woman used to command and protocol, the last 10 minutes had dismantled her sense of control. Her headset sat silent beside the tablet that now bore the blinking red alert from the FAA. Operational freeze. Under federal ethics review. She tapped the intercom, trying to sound calm. This is Lead Attendant Rachel Lind, requesting confirmation on incident support from ground dispatch. Before she could finish, a calm male voice responded, This is Control. Due to active flight ethics trigger status, your privileges have been suspended. Please defer all internal concerns to Stratosphere Holdings Ethics Liaison. Rachel blinked. I'm sorry. What? The line went dead. She stood frozen, mouth slightly parted. For the first time in her entire flying career, the system didn't back her. Usually she could rely on protocols, on policy, on miscommunication as the shield. But this time, the shield shattered before she even drew it. In row 4, Erica Fields whispered to her camera, "You're watching what it looks like when a system finally holds itself accountable. For years, stories like this vanished after landing. Not today." Daniel leaned toward her, murmuring, "You think she knows she's done?" "She knows," Erica said. "She just hasn't figured out what to do without a script." Rachel tried again. She reached into the cabinet, pulled the printed in-flight emergency escalation binder, usually a relic no one touched, and flipped to the conflict resolution page. There it was. In the event of passenger conduct involving legal or reputational threat to airline operations. She stopped reading. Every single line assumed the passenger was the problem. Not once did it cover, what if the flight crew was wrong? What if the passenger had receipts? What if the passenger ran the system behind your salary? She turned to Ethan. "I need a way to contain this. You know PR. You know how we de-escalate." Ethan didn't move from the service bay. "You didn't ask for help when it mattered," he said. "You asked for obedience." Meanwhile, Ava sat beside Noah with her tablet open. "Sir," she said quietly. "Gate control just confirmed. Sky Horizon's boarding privileges have been paused at 3 terminals, Seattle, Denver, and JFK. Security flagged their access tags." Noah nodded. "And the finance lines?" Ava's fingers danced. 2 major lenders issued breach notifications, collateralized flight credits, suspended. Initial estimate, $1.9 billion in flight-based revenue lines, now frozen. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just exhaled. Let the system do what it was built to do. Flashback, 3 years earlier, Washington, D.C. Noah had sat in a wood-paneled office across from an FAA commissioner and 2 airline executives. "I'm not here to disrupt your system," he had said then. "I'm here to give it memory." The commissioner scoffed. "You want to build an automated ethics response mechanism? With funding triggers? I want the next time a passenger is mistreated, the response isn't an email apology and a coupon code," Noah replied. They ignored him then. But not now. Now, flight ethics trigger was active, and everyone knew it. Back in the cabin, Rachel walked the aisle slowly. Her smile was gone, her eyes downcast. She stopped at 2B. "I need to speak to you," she said. Noah didn't look up from his tablet. "I think we've said everything," he replied. "I need you to know, this wasn't personal," Rachel said. "I was just following what I was trained to do." Noah slowly turned to her. The cabin watched. "I'm sure you were," he said. "That's the problem." Rachel swallowed hard. "Is there anything I can do to fix this?" Ava answered for him. "This isn't a PR fire. It's a protocol fire. You don't fix that with flowers. You fix it with audits." Ethan finally stood. He looked at Rachel. "You need to sit down. You're not in charge anymore. You're just still here." Jason, the junior attendant, took a step forward. "Ma'am, I'll take over cabin service." Rachel hesitated. "You're not cleared." "Cabin command has transferred to Stratosphere Holdings Ethics Division," Jason said, holding up the alert from the onboard terminal. "Your credentials are temporarily locked." The air in the cabin shifted. Everyone felt it. Noah stood. He stepped to the front of the cabin and turned toward the passengers. "I know this has been unusual, but I want to thank each of you, not for silence, but for attention, for staying awake long enough to see how bias operates when it thinks no one will push back." A woman in 3C raised her hand. "I used to think these things only happened in headlines," she said. "I didn't realize how quietly it creeps in." Noah nodded. "It doesn't announce itself, it just embeds itself." Then he turned to Jason. "Thank you for stepping forward," Noah said. Jason looked shocked. "I didn't really do anything." "You corrected course," Noah said. "That's not nothing." Rachel sat down in the jump seat near the galley. Her hands still trembled. She stared at the bulkhead wall, unmoving. Ava approached her one last time. "This isn't the end of your life," she said. It's the end of an illusion. Rachel didn't respond, because for the first time the system didn't whisper, "Don't worry, we'll cover you." It said, "You were seen." The pilot's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a systems alert and a change in airport coordination protocols, we will be initiating a precautionary landing in Dallas-Fort Worth within 20 minutes. Please remain in your seats as we prepare for descent." Gasps echoed across the cabin. Noah turned to Ava. "Dallas?" Ava smiled slightly. "FAA wants to speak with Rachel, in person." Erica looked into her camera one last time for the day. 6 minutes after a hoodie got denied a seat, the entire sky shifted. You don't have to shout to shake the system. You just have to know where the wires are buried. The plane hadn't even fully stopped at the gate when 2 men in black suits and FAA badges stepped onto the jet bridge. Their pace was brisk, purposeful, not dramatic, but direct. Everyone on board could feel it. This wasn't routine protocol. Noah Bennett remained seated in 2B, calm as ever. His tablet rested face down on the tray. Ava stood beside him, tablet still lit, showing the cascade of freezes spreading through 4 banking partners and 2 major travel insurers. Meanwhile, Rachel Lynn sat frozen in the jump seat, pale and silent. Her uniform looked more like a costume now, one she no longer had permission to wear. One of the FAA officials turned to the flight captain who had stepped out of the cockpit. "Captain Johnson?" the man asked. "Yes, sir," the captain replied. "My name is Agent Lyle Mercer. This is Agent Nina Rhodes. We're here on federal authorization to conduct a preliminary ethics review. We need access to the lead flight attendant and all onboard incident logs." Captain Johnson blinked. "You're conducting it here, on the plane?" Agent Rhodes responded firmly. "We're not waiting for another press cycle. This flight is already trending." In row 4, Erica Fields whispered to her camera. "FAA just boarded. I repeat, this is no longer a PR matter. It's a full-scale regulatory intervention." "I've never seen anything like this mid-tarmac." Daniel Hayes murmured. "They usually send a letter weeks later, not agents with badges and pens still warm." Erica grinned without looking away from her lens. This is the ripple effect of power with ethics." Agent Mercer walked directly to Rachel. "Ms. Lind, we'd like to speak with you privately. Please come with us." Rachel rose slowly, trying to straighten her uniform as if she could still wear authority, but her shoulders were hunched. The pride was gone. She glanced at Noah but didn't meet his eyes. "I assume I'll have representation?" she asked. "You'll be advised of that shortly," Agent Rhodes said. "But for now, we're initiating a formal flight ethics review under Title 14, Chapter 3.3. Rachel blinked. She knew that clause. It meant she was no longer a crew member. She was a subject. As they escorted her down the aisle, passengers didn't jeer or cheer. They simply watched, because something bigger than her was unfolding. She was no longer the antagonist. She was a symptom. Ava turned to Noah. "Sir, the FAA Ethics Review Committee just released a bulletin. 5 airlines are being placed on temporary compliance watch. They cited your flight ethics trigger as the initiating mechanism." Noah nodded, eyes steady. "And the parent company?" Ava smiled. "Sky Horizon's board has just called an emergency meeting. They issued a statement. The CEO has been informed." Noah leaned back. "He better be." Cut to Sky Horizon headquarters, Manhattan. A modern glass tower, 28 floors up. CEO Brennan Lang stood in front of a 12-foot screen showing a live analytics dashboard. Red blocks lit up across routes, terminals, and bank systems. Each flash marked a freeze. Each freeze meant lost money. Every second meant more. His assistant rushed in. "We have the FAA on line 1 and Treasury Council on line 2. And sir, the stratosphere trigger is active. It's been activated under full Section 17 protocol." Lang cursed under his breath. "Who the hell was on that flight?" His compliance chief stepped forward, pale. Noah Bennett." Lang dropped his glass. "Back on the plane. Jason, the junior attendant, quietly walked the cabin offering water bottles and ginger cookies. He didn't say much, but his posture had changed. He wasn't scared anymore. He looked like someone who had just been shown the cost of silence and chosen a different future. Erica caught his eye. "Jason, when did you know this was bigger than a seat mix-up?" He shrugged. "Honestly, when Rachel said people like him always push their luck, that's when I realized she wasn't checking the manifest. She was checking her prejudice." Daniel leaned in. "You going to keep flying?" Jason gave a half smile. "Only if they let me help rewrite training." Meanwhile, outside the aircraft, a black SUV approached the tarmac. The door opened, and out stepped a sharply dressed man with silver temples and piercing eyes. It was Harvey Clemens, the FAA's Deputy Director of Civilian Transport Ethics. Noah saw him through the cabin window and turned to Ava. "That's Clemens," he said. "If he's here in person, this is no longer containment. It's reform." Ava checked her tablet. "Confirmed. He's convening a working group on site. You've got 22 minutes to brief before the cameras hit." Noah stood, adjusted his blazer, and walked to the exit. As he stepped off the plane, Clemens extended a hand. "Mr. Bennett," he said, voice even. "Looks like your system works." Noah shook his hand. It wasn't built to freeze planes. It was built to thaw silence. Clemens nodded. "We've reviewed the logs. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't demand a show. You just let your infrastructure speak." Noah didn't smile. When the ground is shaky, the foundation has to be louder than the storm. Back inside, Erica wrapped up her final clip. To anyone watching this who still thinks boarding passes come with invisible qualifiers, today proved otherwise. She paused, then added, "And to the ones who think wearing a hoodie means you don't belong, ask yourself this: what if the man in the hoodie is the one who funds your runway?" Back at Sky Horizon HQ, Brennan Lang picked up the secure line. "This is Lang. What do we need to do to reverse the freeze?" The voice on the other end was cold. "You don't get to reverse this. You get to answer for it." Click. Lang stood alone in a $10 million corner office, and for the first time in his tenure, he couldn't buy silence. Back at the gate, Noah returned to his seat. The plane hadn't moved in 30 minutes, but the industry? It had already shifted. Ava sat beside him, eyes still on the screen. "Sir," she said, "we just received the draft." Noah glanced. On the screen was a document with a simple title: Passenger Ethics Charter, V1.0, co-authored by Stratosphere Holdings, FAA, Civilian Oversight Task Force. He nodded. This is what justice looks like before it gets printed. 3 hours after Flight 224 grounded at Dallas-Fort Worth, the ripple effects had gone from headlines to boardrooms, and not everyone was cheering. Inside a soundproof conference room at the National Air Carriers Association in D.C., 12 men and women sat stiff-backed in leather chairs. The mood wasn't panic. It was strategy cloaked in ego. At the head of the table sat Martin Blaylock, the silver-tongued president of the NACA, a man who once lobbied Congress into softening 3 major safety mandates by calling them optional flexibility clauses. Today, though, his voice was sharper than usual. "One black man in a hoodie just put 1.9 B of our flight capital in deep freeze by tapping an automated ethics system we never agreed to." He paused. No one corrected him, not because he was right, but because his anger made sense to them. Meanwhile, in Seattle, Noah Bennett sat in a quiet conference space with Ava and 3 FAA liaisons. The city skyline shimmered through the full-length windows, but his eyes were fixed on the real battlefield, his tablet. 4 lobbying groups are pushing coordinated counter-narratives, Ava said, scrolling. One's calling flight ethics trigger a violation of private enterprise. Another says it criminalizes staff mistakes with no due process. Noah sighed. They're trying to make ethics look like censorship. An FAA rep, Julia Lynn, leaned forward. "Mr. Bennett, they've also petitioned to pause the expansion of your system until it undergoes congressional review." Noah raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. They want to study the impact for the next 5 years while resetting their bonuses? Everyone chuckled, except Ava. Her screen blinked. Confidential. Airline lobby legal draft. Grounds to nullify charter compliance mandates. Back in D.C., Blaylock sipped from a glass of bourbon before continuing. This isn't just about a freeze. This is about who decides what's ethical. And I'm telling you, if Noah Bennett becomes the moral compass of the skies, we're all flying blind. The room nodded, until someone spoke up. It was Camilla Roth, a rare progressive voice among the group. Her airline was small, regional, and barely profitable, but it had the lowest complaint rate in the industry. Or maybe, she said, we're just not used to a system where passengers have teeth. Blaylock smirked. Camilla, you can afford to be noble. You don't have a $40 million compliance team to protect. No, she replied. I just have a conscience. At that very hour, the first lawsuit landed, filed by Allied Carriers Union. It accused Stratosphere Holdings of unauthorized regulatory overreach and anti-competitive freezing of critical industry liquidity. Ava read the summary aloud. They're trying to frame us as a monopoly of morality. Noah sat still, fingers laced, watching the digital blowback unfold. They think I'm a virus, he murmured. But they don't realize I've already become part of the bloodstream. Cut 2. A backroom strategy call between 3 airline CEOs. They're calling it a freeze, but it's a chokehold, one CEO said. It's tech warfare dressed up as ethics, said another. And this guy built the kill switch. The third voice was quieter, measured. I've met Noah Bennett. He's not playing a game. He's redrawing the board. Later that evening, Erica Fields went live on Telltales with a new segment. What happens when power loses its privilege? It doesn't surrender. It retaliates, with lawsuits, headlines, and well-dressed lobbyists who pretend justice is an inconvenience. She paused. But you can't sue silence out of the sky, and you can't unfreeze what was already broken. The video hit 4.3 million views in 9 hours. Noah, however, stayed quiet. He didn't respond publicly. He didn't post a statement. He didn't grant interviews. Instead, he met with whistleblowers. Ava briefed him in a quiet hangar repurposed as a crisis ops center. 4 former airline staffers, 2 attendants, 1 gate agent, and a route scheduler are ready to come forward, she said. They've got documentation showing how profiling matrices were quietly built into seating algorithms. Noah looked up sharply. You're telling me someone wrote code to assign seats based on how someone looks? Ava nodded. And it gets worse. That code adjusts priority access when it flags non-conforming passenger aesthetics. He closed his tablet, face unreadable. Bring them in. That same night, Blaylock made a private call to an old friend at a high-ranking financial publication. We're going to make this guy look like a vigilante billionaire playing God, he said. Let the public think he overreached. His friend laughed. And what if it backfires? Blaylock replied smoothly. It won't. We own the oxygen. All he's got is lightning. But lightning always travels fast and silently. The following morning, 2 major newspapers received leaked internal memos from a source close to FAA reform planning. The memos revealed that at least 12 airlines had quietly built unofficial VIP deviation lists, records used to downgrade or delay non-white passengers who didn't match expectations of premium flyers. The public outcry was immediate. Noah finally stepped onto a small stage at a closed-door ethics conference in Seattle. He wasn't flashy. No cameras, no applause. Just 1 mic and a room full of decision-makers trying to decide whether he was the storm or the signal. I didn't design flight ethics trigger to freeze planes, he said. I designed it to thaw silence. He paused. Let me be clear. This isn't about punishing flight crews. This is about holding systems accountable for what they normalize, not just what they tolerate. He closed with a line that would soon be quoted everywhere. If we can calculate turbulence, we can calculate bias. And if we can do that, we can choose to land better. Outside the venue, Camilla Roth waited for him. She shook his hand. "You've got enemies now," she said. "But you've also got us. Not all of us forgot what it feels like to be told, 'You don't belong here.'" Noah nodded. "Then maybe it's time we rewrite the welcome speech." The Capitol hearing room was unusually quiet. Noah Bennett sat alone at a long table, a single mic in front of him. His dark blue blazer was tailored, his posture upright, but not rigid. Calm, like a man who knew the weight of what he was carrying. Rows behind him were filled with airline execs, FAA delegates, and media, press badges gleaming under the lights. On the far wall, the gold seal of the Senate Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure loomed, flanked by two flags that suddenly felt symbolic. Across from Noah sat the senators, some familiar faces, some skeptical, and one, Senator Eliza Horn, from Georgia, who leaned forward first. "Mr. Bennett, let's be clear. You're not a government official. You don't represent the FAA, yet in 6 minutes your system froze $1.9 billion in airline liquidity. Who gave you that authority?" Noah didn't flinch. "No one. That's the point. Power shouldn't wait for permission when lives are being quietly degraded." The room murmured. A few senators looked down at their papers. Others looked straight at Noah. One tapped a pen, annoyed. Another nodded, just barely. Senator Horn continued. "You triggered a chain reaction that led to 82 canceled flights, 4 board resignations, and multiple class action suits. Are you saying you regret nothing?" Noah looked her in the eye. "I regret that it took this long." Behind Noah, Ava sat among the FAA advisory group. She was stone-faced, but internally tracking every word. She had the emergency override codes memorized, just in case something went sideways. Next to her sat Harvey Clemens, the FAA deputy director, who had become Noah's unlikely ally. "Watch Horn," he whispered to her. "She's not trying to destroy him. She's testing the boundary of where public opinion lands." Ava nodded. "She won't like the answer." Senator Horn shuffled her notes. "You say flight ethics trigger is data-driven, but some say it's emotional, a personal vendetta against airlines." Noah raised an eyebrow. "With all due respect, Senator, the only emotion I saw that day came from a flight attendant who decided my skin tone didn't match her seat map." There was a silence, a charged one. Senator Marcus Klein, a veteran from Vermont, leaned forward. "Mr. Bennett, I've reviewed your logs. Your system flagged not just one attendant's behavior, but 4 other employees along the route. How was that possible?" Noah tapped his tablet, which mirrored to the committee screen. "Because Flight Ethics Trigger doesn't just record an event. It evaluates patterns, speech tone, keyword clusters, procedural variance by passenger type. We built it to detect not just what happens, but who it consistently happens to." The display shifted to a chart. It showed disparity, clear, uneven, statistical bias laid bare. In the gallery, murmurs turned to tension. Senator Klein asked quietly, "You're saying airlines have normalized bias into operations?" Noah looked straight at him. "Senator, I'm saying they've automated it." Outside the chamber, reporters were already preparing their headlines. Bias by design? Hearing erupts as tech CEO exposes racial metrics in seat allocation. Noah Bennett to Congress, I regret that it took this long. Inside, Senator Horn regrouped. "Let's say we accept your premise. What do you want? Regulation? Mandates? Your company in charge of industry ethics?" Noah paused, not out of hesitation, but because he wanted the silence to land first. Then he answered, "I don't want control. I want conditions. I want every airline that flies through U.S. airspace to sign onto the Passenger Ethics Charter. I want compliance with the Stratosphere Index to become a requirement for FAA certification. I want bias to be as unacceptable as turbulence, because one is an act of God, the other is a choice." A hush swept the room. Some senators looked rattled, others intrigued. Senator Horn leaned back. "You're asking this committee to tie billions of dollars in federal flight operations to an independent charter?" Noah smiled for the first time. "I'm not asking. I'm informing you that 17 airports have already agreed to make it a prerequisite, and so has the International Aviation Consortium." Gasps. Audible. One aide dropped a pen. Horn sat up straighter. "That's not possible." Ava, from her seat, passed forward a signed MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with 3 major international airports in Tokyo, Frankfurt, and Toronto. It was real. This wasn't theory anymore. Senator Klein exhaled. "So what happens to airlines that don't sign?" Noah answered evenly. "Nothing, except they'll lose access to 63% of Tier 1 landing slots by 2027. Another beat of silence. And then, it wasn't silence. It was power shifting in real time. After the session recessed, reporters swarmed Noah. "Mr. Bennett, is the ethics charter just the beginning? Do you see yourself as the new FAA? Do you plan to expand to train stations, rideshare, rail?" He answered none of them. Instead, he stopped at one mic, held steady by a young black journalist named Raina Clark, barely 24, visibly nervous. She asked simply, "Was it personal?" Noah paused, then nodded. "It's always personal when the system tells you your seat doesn't belong to you." Back in the hearing room, Senator Horn closed her folder, slower this time. She turned to Senator Klein. He didn't bring tech to Congress. He brought a mirror. The following week felt like whiplash. In the span of 6 days, the airline industry spun from panic to defiance, and then to something far more dangerous: strategic denial. Inside the corporate tower of Sky Horizon Express, a crisis team had been formed. They weren't there to fix what had gone wrong. They were there to rewrite the narrative. "Here's the new internal strategy," said Michael Tress, the airline's chief risk officer, to a boardroom full of legal counsels and PR architects. "We don't dispute the ethics platform. We challenge its scope." One of the younger lawyers raised an eyebrow. "So we're not saying Noah's wrong, we're just saying he's too right?" Michael smirked. "Exactly. We call it algorithmic overreach." Across the city, Noah Bennett was already 3 steps ahead. In a converted warehouse outside Seattle, his core team had gathered again. No suits, no staging. Just devices, data, and grit. Ava pulled up 3 major headlines. Is AI ethics becoming too powerful? Who watches the watchdogs of the skies? Airlines push back against Bennett's empire of oversight. "They're running a full-scale discredit campaign," she said. Noah nodded calmly. "Good. That means they're afraid." He stood, walked toward a whiteboard and wrote 2 words in black ink. "Stratosphere 2.0. Everyone in the room leaned forward. "Version 1 was a trigger," he said. "Version 2 is a contract." Noah's vision was bolder than anyone expected. Stratosphere 2.0 wouldn't just monitor flight crew behavior or flag ethical breaches. It would provide real-time ratings of passenger treatment scores on flights, require airlines to submit bias auditing reports before route renewals, and, most controversially, it would link compliance scores directly to access for federal subsidies and Tier 1 gate assignments. Ava looked up from her laptop. "You're turning moral behavior into operational currency." Noah grinned. "Exactly. You want to fly? Prove you treat people like humans." By Thursday, 4 airline CEOs held an emergency call with FAA stakeholders demanding intervention. "This can't go on," one snapped. "He's single-handedly reshaping the aviation business model." Another voice chimed in. "The industry didn't vote on Bennett. Who does he answer to?" That's when Harvey Clemens from the FAA, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. "He answers to the one metric none of you have mastered: public trust." Silence. Friday brought something even more destabilizing. Noah's team released the first public-facing flight fairness dashboard. It was brutal. Passengers could now see how often each airline downgraded people of color, how frequently gate changes were issued after a VIP seat was reserved by a non-white passenger, and which airlines showed the highest variance in delay times by passenger name and dress code. It was unfiltered, undeniable, and data-sourced. Social media exploded. One post went viral. "I didn't need proof, but now I have it. You can't gaslight a spreadsheet." On the back end, NOAA's servers lit up with heat maps of public interest. California, New York, Florida, Texas, all blue with engagement. Then a ping came in. "New request from Capitol Hill," Ava said, glancing at the screen. "They want you back for a second hearing." Noah's face didn't change. "Of course they do." She narrowed her eyes. "They're scared." "No," Noah corrected gently. "They're negotiating." But not all pushback was political. Late that night, Ava burst into Noah's apartment, eyes wide. "They've launched Flight Cleanse. It's a third-party tool designed to scrub passenger feedback and sanitize it before it hits your ethics index." He blinked once, then twice. "They're trying to game the index." She nodded. "And guess what? It's being quietly licensed by 4 carriers." He sat forward. "Then we don't upgrade. We expose." Within 36 hours, Telltales dropped another expose. Exclusive. Airlines using third-party filters to suppress passenger complaints. Footage included screen recordings of customer service systems rewriting complaints before submitting them into FAA logs. The backlash was instant. By the end of the weekend, 3 CEOs had issued public statements. Only one was honest: Camilla Roth. She posted a video from her own terminal lounge. "We won't use filters. We'll use facts. We won't silence you. We'll learn from you. And we stand with the ethics charter, not because we're forced to, but because we're finally listening." Noah sent her a simple message: "You're the future." Sunday morning, Noah met with senior FAA advisors in a closed-door session. He outlined a simple new condition for airline license renewal: submit to quarterly bias exposure audits. Achieve minimum score on Passenger Ethics Index sign onto the Flight Justice Framework. Effective immediately, someone asked. "What if they refuse?" Noah replied, with the weight of a man who'd already been denied his seat, and claimed the whole plane back. "Then they don't fly." That evening, Ava stared at her screen. The dashboard lit up again. Public support had crossed 72% nationwide, and 17 additional international airports had requested integration. "What now?" she asked Noah. He leaned back, finally allowing himself to exhale. "Now," he said, "we finish the audit." "For who?" "For everybody who's ever been told, 'You don't belong here.' Tell us where you're watching from. And if you've ever been mistreated while flying, your story might just be part of the next reform." The morning the scandal broke, Aerosphere Airlines still believed they could control the storm. CEO Gareth Kincaid, a 58-year-old executive molded by decades of unchecked authority, stared out his Manhattan office window as headlines scrolled across muted TV monitors behind him. Aerosphere refuses to sign ethics charter, cites operational overreach. Noah Bennett responds, "You can't negotiate with gravity." Gareth wasn't just refusing to sign. He was doubling down. In an internal memo leaked the night before, he'd called the Flight Ethics Index a glorified social scorecard weaponized by activists in suits. His strategy? Position Aerosphere as the last airline standing against what he termed data tyranny. But what Gareth didn't know was that the system had already moved without him. By 10:30 a.m., Stratosphere Holdings flagged Aerosphere's non-compliant status to its network of financial partners and infrastructure providers. At 1100 COD a.m., 3 international airports, Amsterdam, Singapore, and Johannesburg, suspended Aerosphere's priority landing slots. By noon, FAA certification auditors arrived unannounced at Aerosphere's San Diego regional office. By 2:00 p.m., 32,000 passengers across 19 countries received texts. Flight change. Due to non-compliance with international passenger ethics standards, Your Aerosphere itinerary may be rebooked or canceled. Details soon." In the Seattle headquarters of Stratosphere, Ava stared at the data. "Gareth's betting this is temporary," she said. "He thinks no one will enforce it." Noah replied without looking up. "Then he's about to learn what happens when you deny people their humanity in public." Meanwhile, Senator Horn, who had grilled Noah weeks earlier, held a press conference. Her tone had shifted. "This is no longer about one-man system. This is about whether the U.S. aviation sector is willing to operate under a common moral framework." She paused, then dropped the hammer. "Effective immediately, all U.S.-based airlines must comply with the Passenger Ethics Charter or forfeit access to federal infrastructure grants under the Aviation Resilience Act." Reporters froze. That was $8.4 billion in annual support. Inside Aerosphere's crisis room, the temperature dropped. One advisor stammered, "We thought we had time to pivot." Kincaid slammed his hand down. "We don't pivot to public shaming. This is manipulation, emotional blackmail dressed as progress." But the board wasn't with him anymore. 2 members resigned within the hour. Another had already contacted Camilla Roth, CEO of a competing airline, to explore merger terms. That evening, as planes sat idle on tarmacs in London, Atlanta, and Frankfurt, thousands of Aerosphere employees found themselves fielding angry customer calls without answers. Gate agents wept. Pilots stood stunned as their clearances were pulled mid-briefing. And somewhere in a regional terminal in Ohio, a young black woman stood at a kiosk holding her Aerosphere ticket, wondering, once again, if the system was designed to exclude her. This time, the answer was different. Noah Bennett stood before a packed room of press at the new Flight Justice Center in D.C. One airline refused to believe the world had changed. The world reminded them it had. He paused, looked directly at the cameras. "Let this be clear. Ethics are not a suggestion, and dignity isn't something you check at the gate." Behind him, the FAA chairwoman signed a formal order. Effective immediately, Aerosphere Airlines would be placed under operational suspension across all Tier 1 U.S. airports, pending full ethics compliance review. Noah didn't smile. He didn't need to. The system had spoken. It began in a quiet government chamber in Washington, D.C. 8 CEOs from the country's largest commercial airline sat around a polished mahogany table. They were flanked by senior counsel, federal advisors, and one looming presence at the head of the room. Noah Bennett, no title plate, no entourage. Just a plain suit and a folder marked Flight Ethics Charter. Final draft. He didn't speak first. That honor went to FAA Chairwoman Lillian Hart. "We've reached the inflection point. This isn't just about one man being denied his seat. It's about how long we've ignored who gets to be seen, heard, and treated with basic decency in the skies." She turned to Noah. "Mr. Bennett, this table is yours." Noah stood without papers or slides. Just memory. Just truth. "This charter is not a punishment. It's a recalibration." He paused. "Let it breathe. You've optimized your systems for revenue. We've optimized ours for respect." He then listed, deliberately, the 4 elements of the Passenger Ethics Charter: bias detection compliance, AI-based monitoring of passenger interactions for discriminatory patterns, ethics index integration. Airlines must maintain a public ethics score above 82 to retain access to federal gate infrastructure, transparent disciplinary pathways. Crew misconduct cases must be logged and reviewed by an independent ethics board. Equity access protocol. Gate upgrades and VIP reassignments must meet fairness thresholds across gender, race, disability, and age categories. The CEOs exchanged looks, some wary, some resigned, some quietly impressed. One of them, Camilla Roth, CEO of Ascenda Air, spoke up. "We've already adopted your pilot model, Noah. Our passengers trust us more now. We haven't lost revenue. We've gained loyalty." Another, Alan Kapoor, whose airline had initially resisted, leaned forward. "I've spent years believing data was a threat to my legacy. Turns out, Not using it wisely is the real threat. Then came the moment no one expected. Gareth Kincaid, fresh off his public collapse with Aerosphere, appeared on the screen remotely. His tone was subdued, his posture less arrogant than days before. I've been wrong, not just tactically, but philosophically. If I ever get a second chance to lead, it'll be under this charter. The room was silent, until Noah broke it with the gentlest nod. Accountability is a form of leadership. The pens came out. One by one, they signed. Each CEO, FAA Chairwoman Hart. Even 2 international delegates via secure digital signatures. The Passenger Ethics Charter was no longer a concept. It was binding law across U.S. federal aviation. Outside the chamber, press lined the steps of the Justice Center. Ava stepped up first, her voice steady. Today isn't about headlines. It's about the 6-year-old girl who watched her mother get humiliated at a boarding gate. It's about the elderly vet asked to move to economy after reserving first class. It's about passengers who were told, again and again, they were confused, in the wrong seat, or not priority material. That ends now. Noah walked out next, flanked by no one. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Bennett, are you satisfied?" He paused, looked up at the media throng. "Satisfaction is for people seeking revenge. I came here looking for reform." Another asked, "What happens if an airline refuses to maintain compliance?" He didn't flinch. Then the skies closed for them. That afternoon, a formal FAA bulletin went out. Effective immediately, all domestic and international airlines operating within the U.S. must comply with the Passenger Ethics Charter. Non-compliant carriers will be subject to route revocation, certification holds, and public disclosure of audit failures. News outlets exploded. Social media turned celebratory. One tweet went viral. From "You don't belong here" to "You just changed the air we breathe." Thank you, Noah Bennett. In Seattle, Noah returned to his quiet office overlooking the Sound. On his desk was a handwritten envelope. No return address. Inside was a note. "My name is Ernest. I was 76 when a gate agent told me my cane made me a safety risk. Today, I flew with dignity. No one flinched, no one looked away. Thank you for making us visible." Noah folded it carefully, placed it in his drawer. Later that evening, a celebratory dinner was held at a small DC bistro. Only 8 people were invited. Noah, Ava, Chairwoman Hart, Camilla Roth, and several ethics tech pioneers from the early pilot phase. Over drinks, someone asked, "What's next?" Noah smiled. "Now that the skies are fair, let's work on the ground." He meant it. Within weeks, Stratosphere announced the creation of the Transit Fairness Alliance, a consortium to adapt similar standards to bus, train, and rideshare industries. Because injustice doesn't stop at the terminal gate, and neither would Noah. 3 months after the charter was signed, Noah Bennett stood quietly before a glass wall overlooking the National Transit Reform Summit in Chicago. He wasn't here as CEO anymore. Not of Stratosphere, not of the Ethics Consortium, not of anything corporate. Just Noah, citizen, founder, resigner. The audience didn't know yet, at least not officially, but the document was signed that morning. Effective today, the Stratosphere Passenger Index and all its derivatives, including the Flight Ethics Charter, would be managed by a citizen-led ethics board, independent of corporate or government interests. 9 members. Elected. Rotating. Transparent. It was Noah's final design, and his final gift. Inside the main hall, Chairwoman Hart gave a speech unlike any she'd ever delivered. Systems only last when people trust them, and people only trust them when they see themselves reflected. She pointed gently to the audience. Today, we are no longer managing ethics from the top down. Today, we are handing the skies and the dignity that flies within them back to you. Applause broke like a rising tide. Later, when the cameras were off, Noah sat beside Ava at a quiet table. She nudged him. "You ready?" He gave her that half smile, the one she'd seen back when this was just a pitch deck and a dream. I've always said the best systems outlive their architects. She raised her glass. To letting go. The ethics board took their oath under soft lights and silent witness. Among them, a retired flight attendant from Detroit, a 22-year-old disability rights activist, a veteran, a working mother, a transgender pilot, a black high school principal, a Native American airport manager, a Korean American tech engineer, a blind lawyer from Oakland, the new stewards of fairness. That night, a story aired across national news. From silent humiliation to structural reform, the Noah Bennett story isn't just about one seat. It's about who gets to sit at the table at all. Clips showed moments. Rachel Lind being escorted off a flight. Senators arguing over ethics enforcement. A tearful gate agent apologizing on live TV. Camilla Roth shaking hands with a child in a wheelchair who now flies for free. The last shot? Noah, walking alone in the terminal of a small airport in Vermont. No entourage, no press. Just a duffel bag, a smile, and the satisfaction of having changed the air we all breathe. Somewhere in that airport, a gate agent saw a black man approach the first-class line. She didn't pause. She didn't ask for proof. She just smiled and said, "Welcome aboard, Mr. Bennett." Have you ever been told you didn't belong somewhere? Was it at work, at a hospital, or maybe on a plane?